Hi, everybody. This is Color of Fandom VCon, and we're very happy to have the panel Blerds of a Certain Age. I am going to actually sit back and turn it over to the panel and let them introduce themselves. But thanks, everyone, for coming and for attending. And Penelope, turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you so much. Those of us here are basically the crew from Discussions from the Otherhood, which is a podcast from Other Sci-Fi that we have every Saturday night, I guess about 9 o'clock Eastern time. We are here this evening to talk about being Blerds. And it's basically called, this panel is Blerds of a Certain Age. And all of us are of a certain age. And we wanted to discuss with you all through this panel about how it is that those of us who came up during the period when, Blerds was not a thing yet, how we navigated the world and as Blerds, and how we see the coming new generation of you young Blerds. So I guess I'm going to get started over here, which is to my left, which is James. And so James, just, pop in, tell us a little bit about yourself as a writer, as author, creator, and what generation you find yourself, categorize yourself in.
Okay, I'm a writer of speculative fiction, also erotica. My main thing is the subgenre of occult detective. Okay, anything that's paranormal and occult, that's what my characters deal with. As far as dated myself, I come from the time of classic science fiction on television. Star Trek, Lost in Space, all of the really bad, Irwin Allen series, Dark Shadows, Hammer films, all of that stuff from the 60s and the early 70s. I consider myself, I guess you could say, a hybrid or mutation of a Blerd and one of those kids that was into a lot of sports, So I guess I'm a mutation.
All right. Okay. So over here, going down from you is Otto. And Otto, would you kind of introduce yourself?
I'm Otto. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I'm not a creator. I'm a consumer. So I'm always looking for good content, regardless of who it comes from. I'm really excited to have African-American Black content because it's a different point of view. So, every art form needs an audience, and that's what I am.
All right, fantastic. And next to you is William. William, introduce yourself.
I'm William Hayashi, and I'm kind of a hybrid, being of mixed racial descent. I'm half Japanese, half Black, or Japanegro, if you will. I came to writing late. The first thing creatively I wrote was in 2001, and it was a story that I had never seen done before, and I enjoyed doing it because what I was doing was I was creating an entire community in a subgenre we don't see very much of, and that's Black themed science fiction. But I wasn't writing it just for Black people. I was trying to write a very generic science fiction story, one that would appeal to all kinds of people, and but just was inhabited by predominantly Black cast. So that was my intent. And the other thing was a rebellion against the notion that there are no original stories left out there. Writers constantly, or people who teach writing constantly say that there's no more original plots or storylines out there. The best you can hope to do is a variation on a theme. And I said, oh, no, that will not do. and that was what led me to creative writing.
So what generation do you call yourself? You categorize yourself?
I'm actually I grew up just north of the golden age of science fiction. I'm a 50s baby, and my father had a vast library, probably hundreds and hundreds of books from the golden age of science fiction. And we're talking about Asimov, we're talking about Heinlein, you know, even McCaffrey, all kinds of people from that golden age. And so that's where I was from a literary perspective. And since I started reading it very young, I think I'd call myself a early 60s consumer.
All right, Valjean, I see you just popped on with us. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where you categorize yourself in these generational wars.
Okay, I'm a speculative fiction writer. I dabble in it. I mix genres, horror, Afrofuturism. I can't stay away from. I have to stick my hand and my feet in everything. I'm also a poet. Um, when you say how do you categorize yourself, you mean like what age or
Your
what?
generation, because I know that some of us, we saw children of the 60s, the 70s, the
Hmm.
50s,
Yeah,
you know, where do you see
yeah,
yourself?
yeah. A child of the 1960s.
Yeah.
Yeah, child of the 1960s. Um, I'm a grandmother, so I just give it up trying to
Okay.
trying
No
to hide
pressure.
my age.
No
But
pressure.
yeah, I grew up in the civil rights movement, the Black Panther movement.
Mhm.
There were no When I was growing up, there were no black role models for me. Um, the ones that I found were in literature, like
Mhm.
Richard Wright and James Baldwin. I always refer to Richard Wright because his magic realism is just off the chain. But TV movies, there were no. Mm-mm. And then later we got Uhura. She was like the first one.
Mhm.
Um, she was the only one for a long time.
Yeah.
So, well, that's how I categorize myself.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Good. Now, I see here, and I
Mhm.
know that Cranston is in the room. I see his name with that really weird writing. It always comes up looking like it's Arabic or something. Cranston, can you hear us?
Actually, it's the writing from my home planet.
Oh, okay. All right, we
Oh,
got it.
wow.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, Cranston, again, just introduce yourself as a writer, as a creator. What is it that you do, and what generation do you find yourself most comfortable stating that you're from?
Okay, my name is Cranston Burney. I am firmly a baby boomer. I started school in 1960, so I came in right after International Geophysical Year, and right at the time that everything was space age. They would just drop space age in front of everything: space age fabric, space age this, space age that. And I started reading. I guess I was also in the silver age of comics. That's where I started doing a lot of
You can think about
reading, and then slowly morphed into books. And
it. Come back
so I came in
Sunday.
on I guess it was the last of the golden age in science fiction, and sort of like the height of the
Just talking.
pulps. There were like 3 or 4 magazines you could get short stories, and I found that science fiction tended to be the only thing that was really interesting. Just general literature was kind of boring or kind of every day or something. And so that's what I've kind of gravitated toward. And I too enjoyed all of the movies that it wasn't until years later I realized how bad a lot of them were. But at the time, they were just all bright and shiny like fireworks or something. But then you realize that was a really good fireworks. And then that one was just that one must have got wet before they lit the fuse, because that one just kind of poofed out.
And I know, Cranston, you're a writer. You talk a little bit about what is it you write?
I am basically drawn toward, I started out being one of those hard science guys that had to be like rocket ships and how many rivets were in the door frame and everything and that kind of detail. But as I continued going, I got more interested in the character development stuff. So it's not soft science fiction totally, but more toward that and less space opera and more soap opera, something like that.
All right, cool. Well, I guess I'm the last one in the group. I'm Penelope Flynn. I am a writer, creator, an artist, visual graphic artist. I'm doing novels, short stories, um, 3D artwork, and started a publishing company just this last year. And I am, squarely within that, child of the 60s thing. I was born in the 60s, grew up in the 60s, early 70s. And for all of us that are here, pretty much that concept of blur did not exist when we were growing up. We were just either that odd child, that strange child, that bookish child. And granted, I mean, we talk about this amongst ourselves, a bit, but when most of us were growing up, the concept of, going even into this, not even as a job, as a career, but even, reading, comic books and watching science fiction and things like that, that wasn't even determined to be, the probable entertainment, for kids when we were growing up. So I guess I can ask everybody, just put it out there and just, kind of talk when you want. Um, to just start, James, Otto.
Penelope, I would say this as a
Mhm.
kid, growing up in the late '60s, early '70s, all I for entertainment was a quarter. All I needed was a quarter. Comic book cost 12 cents. Cookies cost like what? And
2 cents a
for a
piece.
penny?
Yeah, two for a penny. That's a 2 for a
Yeah.
penny. Huh?
And I'm good. That's my whole entertainment for a whole day.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But when you were a kid, when you did that, when you got your comic books, was that something that, people in your family said, hey, that's great, read those comic books. We're really, supporting that. Or
Nope.
Was it categorized as odd?
Yep. Don't let them catch you reading comic books.
I was lucky. My father was a big fan of all the radio serials in the when he was growing up in the 40s, and he used to make up little stories that original stories that he would do. He was not an artist, so all of his characters were either literally alphabet letter A or letter B. That was it. Uh, he had a part-time job picking up paper scrap, and they would just pulp all of this stuff. And they had all the remainder comics. They would rip off the covers, and they'd do the rest. So he would gather up whenever he saw comics. He would just
Cool.
grab them up and bring them home, and didn't mind if I read them. They encouraged any kind of reading. So and both my parents were also horror movie junkies, and they had this movie program, Shock Theater, that came on 11:30 after the news, and I would sit up and watch it with them. So they encouraged reading and that kind of thing. Basically, anything that didn't cost them money and it kept them quiet, that was good.
All right. How about you, James? Same?
Well, yeah, well, back then, what I used to do is my parents would give me $1 and I would go down to Westchester Avenue in the Bronx and see, here's what you did. You focused on the Avengers and the Justice League because that way you could get more bang for the buck.
Oh,
Okay,
you're
'cause-
rich, man. You got dollars.
Yeah, listen, and Otto, back then, like you said, a comic was like 12 cents,
Yep.
25 cents. I can remember
Mhm.
being in Paradise because I picked up a large economy size Thor for 35 cents.
Yes, yeah.
And so that's what I used to do. And what I would do, like I said, I would be outside playing, but then there were times when I would get my comic books,
Yeah.
come back to the house and sit in the windowsill in my parents' bedroom and I have, my juices and my cookies and all the bad stuff to eat,
I know,
and just
great
sit in the
dreams.
windowsill and would just chill.
Yep.
When it came to horror, I would have to thank my cousin David, okay, because David, he was into those magazine size horror magazines, which were really reprints, okay, from the 50s. And they were like so gory. I would be like, why are you reading stuff like that? But then I found myself reading them, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's how I was back in the day, and I guess I graduated to in the 80s graphic novels, because I could actually remember when the what is it, The Watchmen had came out back then in the 80s, and also I guess heavy metal. But even in all of that, and we had the Black Panther and Luke Cage, and Storm, but it was always something missing as far as black characters went back then.
And
Let's go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead. Valjean, did you go off and on? No. Okay, William, then go ahead and what was
Well,
your experience?
I was pretty lucky. My dad had subscription to Analog and Asimov's magazine, which came later, and so the mail came around midday. My dad didn't get home till 5 or 6. So if I saw that Analog, I'd read through it before he even got home. I mean, that was, to me, that was like a monthly treat. As I had the same experience as the others, like with comics. It was funny, in my neighborhood, the comic books were sold at Walgreens out of a vending machine for 12 cents, a dime and 2 pennies. But you know, it was just it was kind of a weird place to go, because of course at Walgreens there was no place really to sit and read. So I'd get my comics, I'd go home. As a matter of fact, I still have some here.
Wow.
I've got about this many, in sealed in plastic. I've got a couple first editions and things, and I'll
Cool.
probably bequeath them to one of my children. Hopefully they'll get rich off of them. But comic books, Analog, Asimov's. Later came Omni magazine, which was Bob Guccione production. Who everybody mostly knows from Penthouse.
Yep.
That was kind of cool to see that, to have a slick paged magazine devoted to science fiction. Other than that, it was just, I was just buying books. I read all of my dad's books. I did spend quite a bit of time at the library. I would say kind of like the early teens, maybe from 11 to about 16, going to the library and reading, the authors who I liked. And by 16, I had my own jobs and was able to go and buy the books that I wanted to buy. I think the thing that drew me to it was the question of what if. Like in the Foundation series, I read that very, very early. And I thought about the what if of psychohistory. What if psychology and sociology could be quantified numerically and figured out and even manipulated long term? That seemed like a possible. And so with these what if premises, that's what fired my imagination, going and thinking about, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? And that's the basis for my writing. My writing is a conglomeration of what if and the Twilight Zone, because just about everything I write has an ironic twist at the end. My seminal work was the Dark Side trilogy, which was a trilogy that told the story of what happens in America when the country discovers that African Americans have been living secretly on the backside of the moon since before Neil Armstrong got there. And I thought about the sociological implications of what if blacks finally found their own homeland. And, you know, the series was in part kind of like a, excuse me, an underground railroad to the stars. That's what it eventually figured to be, because what happened was.
So when you
Go ahead.
when you wrote that, I know you as a writer, how much of that, like you said, is I know you just dealing with the psychosocial issues with regard to your story, but with regard to you writing and stuff, so you said you came to it late, but when you were young, was there anything with regard to science fiction, fantasy, that made you believe that you would ever write?
No, absolutely not. Not until the day, what was it? It was February 6th, 2001, when I was sitting at a place that I was the board. It was a
You just blinked out your
showed up.
audio. Okay, there you go. Okay. Well, we get William back. Valjean, I guess the question would go to you then, also with regard to your.
Yeah, I'm sorry I had to pop out.
No, no problem.
We're talking about grandbabies. I had to tell my grandbabies goodbye. They were over here visiting. So,
Okay.
okay, now what was the question?
No, with regard to you when you were a child, when you picked up your comic books, or did you read comic books or horror films, or what was your genre media of choice?
I had a lot. I had about 100 comic books that a friend of mine gave me. My parents were both English professors, and my father was like, he was just really strict, and he called comic books junk. I mean, really, he made me throw all of my comic books away, which I'm still mad about. Yeah, but anyway, but I could read all the Richard Wright and James Baldwin that I wanted to. So that's kind of where I found. I always say that magic realism was the path that eventually led me to, because there's such a close link between between magic realism and that was the path that started. And he didn't stop me from watching horror films. So I love vampires. I mean, I always loved vampires. I was a big Dracula fan and a werewolf fan. So and these things, of course, Penelope, as you know, that's the stuff I write about now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so that's
they're different from
you,
the traditional.
Yeah, but when you were a child and you were could you read your comic books and things like that, I mean, in your family, were you like the only one who read comic books and things of that ilk, or was that something all your siblings did, or is that just you?
I don't remember. My sisters, one of my sisters has passed, God rest her soul, Sidonie. My sister Ani is still alive. She's Honore Jeffers. She's still alive. She's a poet. I don't remember either one of them reading comic books, but I remember watching, as hard as my parents is like I said, they were English professors. I remember watching horror films with my parents. I do. I remember watching The Shining with my mother. And so, that aspect of it was nurtured.
So you're like me. See, my thing was like
she was my mom.
Parents, my parents were big. So we watched Night Gallery and Twilight Zone. That was always and Star Trek was always go on in our family.
Star Trek, Twilight Zone.
But the concept of comic books being junk is right. I mean, we had a guy who worked at Marvel printing shop, and every weekend he used to bring home duplicates of Marvel comic books, like a huge box of them, and he just hand them out. And after a while, the kids just threw them out because they were disposable. The people collected comic books until later on in life, but comic books were looked down as junk. Junk reading. It wasn't classical stuff.
Well, I know with us, with my sisters and I, that we collected comic books. We have lots, and we read lots of comic books, and generally since we were kind of on our own, doing our thing, that nobody really paid too much attention about, how many comic books and stuff it was that we were aggregating, but we did all the time. And we always watch, like, was it you have the Sunday programs that come on with the horror show.
Yeah,
Everybody
but
has one. Ours was,
Penelope, when your mom cleaned
excuse me?
your mom cleaned your room, or when she
No,
was it
no,
gone?
you
Did she get your did she get your comic books and throw them out and say, "This is garbage"?
No. But when we moved from our old house to our new house, and I wasn't there the day that we did the move, they left a lot of my stuff.
Because it's not
It
valued.
was in their packet, and
It wasn't valued.
did it. Yeah,
It wasn't valued.
right.
No, well,
Right.
it's just by the grace of God with my mother that she didn't touch my comic books, because I can remember, moving out the house and being on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was one day I came back home and I went into my closet, and in the corner of the closet was my comic books, not only my comic books, but my baseball cards.
Along with the Playboy magazines.
Well, no, it wasn't Playboy, it was
Wow.
Players.
Player.
Oh, that
I
is
just caught
great.
that.
Do you have any of them still now?
Player magazines.
Have you
Player
have
magazines?
yeah,
No,
Player
seriously,
magazine?
no, seriously, I have one or two left. Yeah.
No Player. I'm talking about your comic books, man. Not Player. Your comic books. Do you have any of them still now?
Yeah, I have some of my comic books left over. What I did was, what was in the closet, I started to build up on a collection again. But see, my comic collection, I also have a couple of analog science fiction digesters too, and a couple of omnis too. And so I built on that. And I'm the type of person, I just try to read it, try to get a comic that's the story is contained. I'm not that much of a story arc person. So, it's kind of hard these days, for me. But no, just by the grace of God, my stuff was in there. What is the name? What is it? Martin that did the King of Thrones. What's it?
George Martin.
Oh, Game of Thrones. Game of
I'm
Thrones.
sorry. Yeah, Game of Thrones.
Excuse me.
Actually, somewhere in one of my comic boxes, I have I believe, an analog of a story that he wrote way back when.
Wow.
You're lucky.
Wow,
You're
wow.
lucky.
Well, I know with us, I know we, moving around as we did, and when we met, and when eBay started, the first big eBay stuff, the first thing we did was reclaim all our comic books. We bought comic books like Beasts Unchained. Mine, of course, when I was a girl, Superman Family was, one of the ones that had the big digest. So we get the Superman Family. So, I tried to recreate the collection I had from my childhood with all of those, and especially, what is the Witching Hour, the horror comic books. We read those as we kids.
But you know what that is, Penelope, though?
Go on, what?
You're trying to make up for the stuff tossed out in the garbage.
Yeah. yeah. But it was great. And I think we got some. I know you have some first editions, don't you, Otto? I know, what do you have, Namor?
I got EC. I have a bunch of EC comics and stuff, but I'm trying to make up for stuff.
Yeah.
In my child, growing up as a so-called black nerd, number one, that wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
And then number two, to survive in the neighborhood, you be a quote unquote black nerd. You got to play some ball. You got to do some. You can't. You can't just walk around like
that. Yeah, but all of you all were into sports, weren't you, William, Otto, and James? Were you all into sports when you were coming up?
Yeah. I love playing football, baseball, basketball. But Otto was right. If you back then, if you was a nerd, that was like a bullseye on your back, whether you were male or female.
Yeah.
I made the mistake of choosing an elite an elitist sport. You know, I played tennis, and
Oh,
I was the only brother on the team for a while.
Double whammy.
But yeah, the nerd part, the blurred part, came later. You know, one of my big hobbies was building electronics through that old company Heathkit.
right.
and,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's how I got
Oh
exposed.
my
Someone
God.
came over, and we went down in the basement. And on my workbench, at the time, I was putting together an oscilloscope.
Now, Mr.
And
Cranston, excuse me, Cranston, you are
yeah,
not on the screen, and so it's hard for me to know when you're in and out. So just you're gonna have to jump in because I may miss you because you're not on the screen. So just jump in anytime.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry, William. Go ahead.
no, no. I mean, that was kind of it. As soon as I got into Heathkit, you know, I was always buying kits and parts from Radio Shack,
Hmm.
and so, but the
So you.
benefit to it, because
Mhm.
later a lot of the bands that I used to hang around with, or the people in bands, you know, all urban bands, R&B bands, they would have me build that big Heathkit
Wow.
amplifier for their sound systems.
Mhm.
So there was benefit. I didn't catch it like with a bullseye on my back, but it was more like, well, you know, William will do that. You know, he's into that.
So just leave
Wow,
into
that's
Mhm.
just
that's
leave
that's
into
a
your
blast
nerdism,
from the
huh?
past
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
Heath
Okay.
kids, you know. Oh my goodness, my father, God bless him, he passed away this year. He built
Mm.
our stereo system, he built the
Wow.
Oh wow.
television, he built radios.
Oh
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. How about you, Cranston? What
Okay,
did you
well,
do?
well, statistically, with 30 million of us in the country, there has to be one of us who doesn't have rhythm, who doesn't sing or anything like that.
Mm.
Can you dance? Can you
However,
dance
contrary
though?
to the
Oh
to
boy.
the popular stereotype that Black people are anti-intellectual, that even though I was, you know, just considered to be that would have been the name they used, nerd at the time. I never got teased for it or anything, and it was kind of expected. That was my place in the middle school and up through high school ecosystem. And you're supposed to be the person that has all the answers, and they actually got disappointed if they thought I didn't have an answer somewhere. So I managed to look out that way. And we had a thing that was they used to have a state test that they would give, the Florida state test and everything, and it was like an e-ticket to a state university and everything. And they were so happy one year because in the Black schools, and these were all Black schools that didn't do well in the school because people get in there and Christmas tree the answer sheet and take a nap or something like that. But that year they were so happy because they had like a large number of students who had scored in the middle range, and usually we didn't get that. And they had 3 students that had scored in the white folks range and stuff. You know, we had scored the big scores and everything. And I was one of those people. And so they called us in at the end of the day and told us about it. And then at the end of the day, they announced the scores on the over the PA system. Then the bell rang. We were out of school, so everybody's in the school going out. And the thing was, the 2 of us that they had called into the office before they did that were being congratulated by people, and they were happy that we had done it. So we did not have that kind of anti-intellectualism thing about, Black students underperform because they don't want to be left out. They wanted somebody to do, even if it's not going to be me who did it, they wanted somebody else to do it.
Well, when we grew up, it wasn't enough to be smart. You had to be able to dance, and you had to be able to play ball and these other things.
Mhm.
If you were only the smart guy or smart girl, then that was fantastic. Everybody and what showed you as
Uh-huh.
it's hard to social. It's very hard to socialize.
Well, that's the other thing is because we were smart, they didn't expect us to socialize. Now, if you did try to horn yourself into these things, that is where, you'd find out what are you doing here, but anything else, hey, that was it. If it involved a bookmark, great for you and stuff, but anything else, forget about it.
Wow.
I know when I was growing up, I was an oddball. Yeah, I was an oddball. I was kind of lonely,
Hmm.
and as I got older, and the more I got into writing, I was like, I don't want to hang around with y'all no way, because you're not talking about anything I'm interested in. And that's when I started to find, I mean, you're dull. That's what I don't care, you're dull, you know. And that's as I began to find a community of writers. Um, and I call us all, well, I won't, well, I'll say misfits a lot of times, but beautiful misfits. I mean, the world people, no, ordinary people don't make history. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
ordinary people don't leave their footsteps in the stands of time. So maybe that sounds elitist, but
I didn't want to be lonely though. I don't want to be by myself. I want to be with the girls, and I want to be able to dance, and I want to be able to be with cool kids and score high on my SATs.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be by myself.
Yeah. Yeah. But I
yeah.
think
Well,
I was,
it changes when you get older, though, right? I mean, because as I said, when you get older, that's when you find people that are compatible.
yeah,
You know,
people like you. You find your tribe.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I was lucky because I was born into a tribe. You know, my sisters were all, really into the same types of things I was into, the ghost stories, fairy tales, all of it. We were all into a lot of the same types of stuff. So, it wasn't as lonely for us because we really had each other all the time to deal with that. And then when I went to school, the interesting thing, as I'm sure most of you all, those of you all who were like me, who went to integrated schools, after I guess I was in third grade, our schools were integrated. Well, first grade was integrated, second grade, not so much, third grade on was integrated. But I found that there's not many Black kids when I was growing up who were into the things that I was. It was mostly, the Anglo kids, the
Mhm.
Jewish kids, the Italian kids, ones, went to school with later on,
Yeah.
that were into the same stuff that I was into. And it took a while. I guess
Mhm.
by the time I got to, I guess, high school, is when I started meeting more people, more Black kids like I was, who were into the same types of things that I was into.
Well,
Did you all find that the same?
it's funny. It's funny that Valjean used the word misfit because the first short story that I ever tried to write,
Mhm.
its title is The Misfits Table, and it's actually like a autobiography or whatever about me going through hard times in junior high school. In fact, I think way back on a show that William interviewed me on for um for Black Science Fiction Society, I had told him that I was trying to write the great American short story with that story, you know.
In junior high, what happened to you in junior high school?
In junior high school, like I said, I was a half and half. I was a mutation. One minute I would be hanging out with supposedly the in crowd, and the next minute I would be hanging out with the nerds, and that tended to create problems. You know what I'm saying? I could actually remember beating up one of the in crowd and getting beat up by one of the in crowd. You know what I'm
Oh
saying?
wow. Oh
Yeah.
wow.
So yeah, when it's with me, I've also had this thing where I've never had a problem being, I guess you could say, the lone wolf because
Yeah.
I'm able to, I was always able to escape into books and comics and
Always. Hmm.
you know
Always.
stuff
Yeah.
like that. So, like I said, back in the day when growing up, yeah, I would be outside playing stickball and baseball, whatever. But
Yeah.
if it got to the point, like I said, I would go down Westchester Avenue and get my comics and see ya. You know what I'm saying?
But you can do both. You can do
Yeah.
both though.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll just step
I,
away for a moment because I have to blow my nose, but I'll leave you all to it. I'll be right back.
you
Yeah.
Both.
know, maybe
That's the
more
thing.
people would have been into it if we had more role models. I mean, when I was growing up, I mean, you know, you identify with characters, whoever they are. I mean, you get you take what's there.
Right.
But now looking around, there are so many um characters that for young people to identify with, you know, people of color in comics. I mean, I've gotten so spoiled, I don't even watch a program if it doesn't have someone that's black or Latino or Asian, or what. If I look at it and it's just completely white, I pass on it.
But
Yeah,
what
But
yeah.
about
I
Well,
mean,
you
back in
kind
my
of you
what
kind of
about
look at it
Superman and
like
Spider-Man?
the '60s. During the '60s, we were thirsty for role models. You know, we had Lieutenant
Mhm.
Uhura on Star Trek,
Right,
and I can
right.
remember a
Hmm.
couple of podcasts ago, Cranston and me were mentioning it was also that light skinned guy on Voyage to the Bottom
Voice
of
of
the
the Bottom of the
Sea
Sea, yeah.
that you would see in the
Oh
background.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
What about
and
Mission Impossible?
Oh,
there
That
you
Greg
guy,
go.
that
Morris.
the
Yeah,
smart
Greg
brother.
Greg
Morris.
Yeah,
Morris,
yeah,
yeah.
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 Oh my
Greg
God,
Morris. Yeah.
we
He
love.
was so cool. I always thought he was so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
In
that
fact,
was,
Hmm.
now if you go on with Pluto TV,
Mhm.
they have the Mission Impossible channel. So Pluto's free. So if you ever go on there, the whole channel dedicated to the old Mission Impossible.
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
that was one of the things that you would have to do
Hmm.
in those days is that you would read stories and you would, and it was a good thing and a bad thing is they would tend to make the characters neutral. So you could kind of insert yourself in there as like a member of the
Right.
group somewhere or
Hmm.
something. And you didn't know that you were excluded from that. Later you
Right.
found that out. But at the time you just kind of inched yourself in there. But I can remember when that first episode of Star Trek came on and everything, and they had been hyping it up, and my whole family was watching it and we were all sitting around there and stuff. So that first scene comes on when the ship goes by, and you're looking at that saying, you know, you'd never seen anything that looked like that. It didn't have any fins, no smoke coming out of the tails and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And then they cut into the first scene, and you see these three people in the scene. And there's this guy with pointed ears sitting in one place. Then you have a regular looking white guy on one side and this black woman sitting there. And you just stop there and saying, you know, you don't generally see colored people in
Yeah,
space.
yeah,
Colored people.
Hmm.
Yeah,
yeah. Colored people.
yeah.
Other
But
people.
when you buy a Superman or a Spider-Man comic book, do you feel when you see, you know, the main character is white, do you feel excluded when you read those things?
Well,
When I was young, I didn't. When I was young, I just thought it was a thing. I wasn't really
That
conscious of it when I
was.
was
Yeah.
really young. It's only when I got older was I really conscious of that, that we were you know, that we were different, that they were not different, but that there was none of us in the picture. It's like, well, this is fine, but
Mhm.
where are we? Where are the black people? Are we not superheroes? I guess my big first superhero introduction was when I was in college because I had really good friends that sat in the back of one of my classes and read the X-Men. And Storm, I guess, was my first real introduction to a main character throughout a comic book, that was a black woman. I mean, and when I was a kid, I remember the character, remember Black Canary, but she was a white woman with blonde hair. So
Yeah.
how in the world,
How's she black?
you know?
Yeah.
She
So
got
it's,
black clothes on.
yeah. So I mean, but every other black, think about it: Black Adam, Black Falcon, every other black that was black, Black Panther was always a black person, except Black Canary. So
She
they
was
would
black.
not make
Yeah.
Black Canary into a black woman. And I think the first time they made Black Canary into a black woman was it last year, the year before or so, in Birds of Prey, the television show.
Mm.
But before that, no. And I think isn't she also Journey Smollett? Didn't she play, I think, Black Canary in what is the thing with Harley Quinn show, the whatever that's
Oh,
called?
Birds of Prey.
Yeah, Birds of Prey, Birds of Prey. Yeah, so yeah, she's
Oh yeah.
the only one.
But what about?
Is it
I hate
okay
to
to
say
see
this.
if people would like to? Okay, yes.
I hate to
People
say
can
this, but
start asking questions. Yeah, if you have
what
any.
about black? What about black? What about black characters like, you know, Luke Cage and
Yeah.
it's always marginal. They make the
Yes.
it's always, you know, like Luke Cage for some reason in the whole city of New York. His area is Harlem. He doesn't step outside 125th. It's like, don't you come outside. You know, it's like Spider-Man swinging all over the place.
Yeah, but even more than that, when you talk about the issue, we talked about this before on our show with Black Panther and Luke Cage. And the reason that Black Panther is this, African prince is because they had it in their minds, through Marvel Comics, Stan Lee at the time, that nobody would believe, a regular Black man, African American male could be these things, smart and accomplished and wealthy. So they had to make it something more other and separate because they figured their readership was predominantly together, white males would never believe it. So that's why Black Panther is not African American, and why
Well,
Luke Cage is something that they can identify with, i.e., a criminal and a Black man. So yeah, that is a big issue, which is why I always took issue. I never did like Luke Cage. I only watched the show, to see how they.
Well, back then, I also had the problem with them damn yellow boots and jackets.
Okay, okay, and also not fashion conscious. That's an important thing, not fashion conscious. And I know that Cranston once gave us like the real lowdown on what is the guy Black Lightning.
Oh yeah.
And Cranston, you have to give us that little discussion.
Yeah,
Black Lightning.
Well, Black Lightning was Jefferson Pierce, who was a teacher who, and I forget exactly how he got his powers, but he decided to do what he could for his community, and that was back in the suicide slums, which was an area of Metropolis that was so bad. So that was one of the areas that even Superman wouldn't fly across. They had a no-fly zone for that. And DC had generally had a bad time of introducing Black characters, and whenever they did try to do it, it was always something that did not come out quite as well as they'd intended. Like there was one episode where Lois Lane somehow or another turned Black for a day, and it was only by Lois Lane become, I guess it was Black like Lois or something like that, that she realized what it was like for all the Black people who apparently did not work for the Daily Planet.
I want that comment.
And,
yeah, we'll find it for you.
And there was another one where they were doing a background story of what was life on Krypton and everything, and they explained, and it was in one panel of like a whole 24-page comic of explaining that for some reason, it didn't explain why, but they said that all of the Black people on Krypton had decided to relocate themselves on this one island, Vatlo Island. And they had an illustration of the Black people, and they were dressed like in platform shoes with big afros and everything.
Oh my gosh.
Never explained why they decided to self-isolate themselves. Maybe that was, we invented social distancing back on Krypton or something. But
Yes, so. Yes, so. Well, I know that Donna was asking if we're open for questions, in these last few minutes.
Yeah, I was wondering, so for those of you who are watching, if you have questions, because I actually do. So that was part of the reason why I wanted to do this also. But I have just really enjoyed listening to you guys. I guess, it's funny because, I know that I feel like I can relate to a whole lot of stuff. I'm right around the corner from 50 years old. So I'm like, I can kind of relate to some things. How do have y'all seen Lovecraft Country?
Yes.
And I was just wondering, how do you feel about the portrayal of all of the different, of that time period, of the seeing Lovecraft Country, Watchmen, or just seeing like now speculative fiction portraying some of the atrocities that have really happened in history?
Both of them, I'll jump in quickly. Both Lovecraft Country and Watchmen was excellent. Just really, just hands down. I don't think I've ever seen a better recent portrayal period of oppression, of racism, both of them touched on so many different things. I had a few problems with them both. Well, I like for my super. I don't want to do any spoilers, but I like for my characters to survive. And that's just me. I'm not casting any aspersions on the series. I mean, they were excellent. I watched them both. I enjoyed them both. Um, I think like as an African American woman, a Black woman, and everybody I'm sure can relate. We just see in our real lives there is so much death and pain around us that I just now that's just me. I just want something when I go to fiction. I want something where
Yeah, I
and
want to
maybe
be a
that's
winner.
unrealistic, but
I want to be a
it's
winner.
fiction.
I want to be happy. Okay. Eventually, I don't
Yeah.
mind going through a whole, travails and stuff, but ultimately,
Right,
be a winner and
right,
be happy. Those are
right.
things
Well,
that
I think Watchmen had a happy ending kind of, but
Yeah.
the thing is that Watchmen I thought was way better. Lovecraft Country episode 6 especially showed something that has never not to my knowledge has been shown before, which is the seeing who's about to be lynched because they're Black. Hollywood has never done that before.
Yeah, yeah.
Never show that
Hmm.
horror through a Black
Hmm. It
eyes.
was
Never
excellent.
did.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I thought that was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it's
Hmm.
great,
Yeah.
great.
Well, the one thing I would say about what has happened is that we have gone past the Franklin stage and we're going into the post-Franklin stage. And
Okay, the
that,
thing is, I don't
that
know,
was,
Donna. We have this conversation all the time about
yeah,
Franklin on
yeah,
Charlie Brown. And if you ever seen Charlie Brown Thanksgiving, the fact that Franklin is sitting, everybody else is sitting on one side of the table, and Franklin is sitting on the other side of the table all by himself in the
Really?
broken chair. In the broken chair. I'm not kidding. So if
yeah.
ever you have an opportunity to watch Charlie Brown Thanksgiving Watch and Franklin comes, all the other children are all on one
That
side of the
makes me
table.
so mad.
Even the
That
dog
makes me
is
so
on the
Yeah.
mad.
other side of the table.
That makes me
And
mad because they
Franklin,
did it on purpose. They did it on
Now,
purpose.
now,
yeah,
the other thing about that is that so at first when we saw Franklin, we were just so happy to see a Black face. We didn't question anything
Yep.
else that they did. Then we realized, wait a minute. So recently there was an episode of NCIS New Orleans, and the big story was this white cop is chasing a Black guy through a street party that with Black people, and it ends up shooting one of the people in the Black person in the show. So the whole thing is about the thing about this, and what are we going to do about this and everything. Everybody has a big speech about that, but the one thing you watched that and said they were tackling an issue, and it did have some good plot points in it. But the one thing they kept doing is whenever they had a big speech about how we all need to get together and we're going to be a better person, a better day, they always had the Black people saying that we're going to have to get through this, not the white folks ever saying. They're just saying, we're on your side, we're all on the same side here. So then you realize, okay, it's a good effort, but they still have a way to go. So I think that's
Hmm.
the basic thing that has come up from the inclusion of Black people is it's not
Hmm.
just enough for us to be there, but they still have to turn that final corner to integrate
Right.
things totally. But at least they are trying to make an effort, so it's a lot better.
Well, those shows like that, Watchmen and Lovecraft Country and the Star Trek series with Michael Burnham as the Black woman as the lead, those are all behind a paywall. Why can't we see, like, on normal network television, Black people being strong and in the lead? We don't see that. So it's still some sort of segregation going on.
yeah.
Is
Well,
it
as they say, the struggle continues.
Yeah.
Right, right.
can is it okay if I ask a question, Donna?
Sure, sure.
Uh, You're on mute, so
Okay, go
is
ahead.
it okay?
Sure, go ahead, ask your question.
Okay, yeah, this is Karen. Sorry, I know it just shows up as K, but this is Karen. um, my question is, with the last 18 months of all we are living in a historic moment, and everybody's, digesting what's going on socially, science, I mean, everything has been hit all at once.
Mhm.
How is your creative juices going? What are you taking, or are you taking some of these events and going, your creative side just is exploding or it's not exploding? What's happening?
No, I
Okay.
personally, I stay in my lane because some of this stuff that's been going on, if you put it down on paper, you know, people just wouldn't really accept it. You know what I'm saying? And also with, especially with the pandemic, you want to kind of use your craft as to help people escape from all of that. You know, in my opinion.
That's
Uh,
true. That's true. I write in an alternative universe, so
Okay, I have a,
I can.
I was just gonna say right quick, just so, because I have another panel, I think I can leave because Penelope is a
yeah,
co-host.
right. I've
So
got
I'm going to bow out just to get ready for my next panel. But I just wanted to say right quick, so that means y'all can stay as long as you want now. I just wanted to say thank you so much for doing this. And I hope y'all consider Color of Fandom meetup. We would love to have y'all. We're in the Triangle. But we have people from all over places. And so if you're ever interested, just let me know. Thank you.
fantastic. Thank
Well,
you.
William should
Thank
be
you.
a member because
Thank you.
we
Donna.
met at Dragon Con. He can't see me, so he doesn't know who this is talking to him. But I remember all the stories you said at Dragon Con.
I was a hit, wasn't